Alright, here's the review sheet for this, or video for this review sheet. We went through part of it, but I'll just quickly go through the whole thing again. Number one, you're just subtracting 4 from both sides, so you get 6. Second one here, you're looking for the pattern, so you're adding 2 each time, so you could figure out by hand that the last one's 14. And then the pattern is, you're starting at 2, because that would be the 0 figure, the very start figure, and then it's 2 times whatever the step number is here. So putting in for 4, you get f of 24. 2 times 24 plus 2, you end up with 50. This one here is 0, 0. If you try to solve this by substituting one into the other, it actually doesn't work out because you have to divide by 0 in this case, and you can't divide by 0. So it doesn't actually work. You just have to look at those and figure it out. But normally you could either graph these, which that still works, substitute, or solve by adding the 2 equations together. This one here, you're just rearranging it, and when you do, you get ax minus c on one side divided by negative b. So solving it as if you know that there are numbers there. Number 5, this problem I think is all kind of messed up, to be honest. Number 1, I think this is supposed to be the price for senior tickets and the price for child tickets. So your 2 equations, 3x plus 1y is 38, and 3x plus 2y is $52. You can then take these 2 equations and solve, in this case, for y, and then substitute that in up here, which I did here. Found then when I simplified that x is 8, I took x is 8 and plugged it back into this, which is right down here, and solved and got y is 14. You could have also added these 2 equations here and got these 3 x's to cancel if you multiply this by like -1 and then add the 2 equations. Or you could graph it. The problem is they give you the wrong equations to graph. So if you graph the ones they gave you here, you get these 2 lines, which then where they cross should be the solution. Well, this solution here, which is like -2, 9 or something, has nothing to do with the problem that we just solved, and that's the point. It's supposed to. So had they given you the right equations, they would have given you the 2 that we started with. Then if you rearrange those and graph those 2 right there, you come up with these 2 lines, which cross at 8:14. The one ticket was $8, and then the other ticket was $14. Now that matches what we did in the rest of the problem. So sorry about that. I hadn't worked that in advance. We're just using the math department's problem, and it looks like that's the review sheet anyway, and it looks like it's kind of messed up. Solving this, we solve it like normal, except you're dividing by a negative, so you have to flip the sign at the end. We're just putting a -1 in the place of x, so 2 to the -1 is 1/2, because that kicks it to the bottom of the denominator there. And so we end up with -1.5. We're going up by multiplying by 3. That means it's not linear. So the recursive is 3 times the former one. And then if you step back, divide by 3, you come up with 2/3. And this is your start value, this is your common ratio, and then your power. Looking at this one, you're subtracting 3 each time. That tells me it's linear. So it would look kind of like this, a straight line. Common difference goes here times n, and then your start value goes there, so it's -3n plus 8. In this problem, you're just plugging in numbers for the variables that we have. So 2,000 goes in there. The rate, you have to change that to a percent, so it's 0.015. I just moved the decimal 2 places this way for percent. And then 3 years, so a 3 up there, and I get that for my answer. Here, I assume that these lines kept kind of going upward. It's not super clear if that's the case, so if you assume different, that's okay. But I assume they kept going upward, and so I said it looks like this one is probably getting closer and closer to this line right here, but never quite touching it. So I said that was the edge, and I said this is getting closer to this line here, but not ever getting there. Range we have, the maximum we have, when x is 1, it's 0. Is it a function? Yes, because each input only goes to one output. there's not like 3 doesn't go to a 2 and go to a 7. So we're okay because there is only one input and they're all unique for those x values. This is for the first one 8, second one 7, third one 6. I'm just putting in let's see here, we're just putting in for the first one what we get for f of 1, and then just going 2 is 1 less than that, 3 is 1 less than that, following the pattern. Here is Pythagorean Theorem. Make sure that the 5 is the one by itself on one side because it's the hypotenuse, the longest side. Diagonals here. Well, lines of symmetry, I first draw on all the diagonals and I didn't do it real well. But then it can split each side down the middle. So I draw all those in, I come up with 8, the same number of sides that I have. Parallelogram, trapezoid, kite, rectangle, square, rhombus. Make sure you know those unique characteristics. Slope here, I have to use the negative reciprocal of 1/4 so that they're perpendicular. So I made this 1 over -4 and then made it negative, so it's 1/4. So I use 1/4 as my slope and then pick any y-intercept I want. The transformation here is a rotation as this goes from here and pivots around to there. If I reflect this over this line y equals x, right there, or I could say y equals x plus 0, so the y-intercept is 0 and the slope is 1 over 1. Then here are my new coordinates. When I translate this by x value going up 2, y value subtracting 3, you get this for your new coordinate. This would be side, angle, side, angle, side, so they're congruent. Make sure you do it in the right order, so A to the B, that's the angle that we have congruent to C, so D, the angle we have congruent E to then F. So you have to have these in the right order. Looks like I forgot to do this one. So slope passing through the points. I have my slope formula, y2 over y1, x2 over x1. So 4 minus 2 on the top, and -5 minus -6 on the bottom. That's 2 plus a positive there, and that is +1, so the slope is 2. Distance formula here, it's 9.2. This is a trapezoid. So I'm wondering, are these two parallel or perpendicular lines? So I look at them, and this has a slope of -1/2. This has a slope of 2. Those are negative reciprocals, so that means they're perpendicular lines. Next one here, I notice that we're adding 5 each time, so it's the f of x function plus 5. When I then looked at drawing a straight line, I tried to fit a straight line kind of through the center, didn't do a great job. It's a positive slope, so that means it's a positive correlation, and it's almost a perfect straight line, so I said maybe the correlation coefficient is like 0.9. Remember, if it's a perfect straight line, it would be 1, and if there's no straight line at all, it would be a 0 for the correlation, so it's something in between there. If it's going downhill like this, then it's a negative correlation. Okay, for the 5 number summary here, I found the median was 6, first quadrant 3, or quartile I mean, third quartile 8.5, so I list them as 1, 3, 6, 8.5, 14. These two are the extremes. So there's your 5 number summary. It's just the number version of a box and whisker plot. Here we have B, E, D, A, and C for those. And down here I'm just plugging in the values. 1 plus -1 is 0. 7 minus -5 is 12. And 3 plus -10 is -7. At this point and that point, the two are the same values for the function, so that's -2 and 1 for x. And in between those two, that's where g of x, the straight line, is bigger. F of 2 is 7. When x is 1, then g of x is 4. And adding these two values together, I get 10. The matching here, we have G, D, F, A, B, E, C, J, I, H, and it looks like that's it there. For this one, I graphed Q and then drew in the line y equals -1. For that, it's a horizontal line. And counted down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then counted down 5 more. So it's the same distance and got this as my point. When you flip this thing around, you get point L is up there, which is D. I drew these BIG to HAT so that, remember, the order matters, and then just picked any side angle side that corresponded I wanted. Graph the line y equals x minus 2, so y-intercept is -2. Slope is 1 over 1. I drew that in. Then what I like to do is turn it vertically, and the red line vertical, and then just go over the same distance straight across, and there's x prime. When you take this one and rotate it, and remember, if you use a piece of paper, that's typically easiest for people who aren't real visual. I'll show you what I mean here. Just take a piece of scratch paper or the corner of your page or something like that and put one corner on the rotation, draw in your shape, and then rotate this 180 degrees. I can do that if I start with an arrow like this, and I know that 180 degrees flips something the opposite way, so when the arrow points the opposite way, I'm done. I draw this in here, which I did. Then imagine taking that and flipping it over this axis. It gives it to me right here, and then sliding it up and over, I end up with the exact same image as on the paper. So this maps onto that. This one would be a shift, f of x shifted down 6. When you simplify this, you get c for 25. 26, g of x is below, so f of x is 4 above. Here, the shift up is 6. Here, going this way to that way, you're adding 2, but they're asking you go to backwards the other way, from this to that, so I subtract 2. Distance formula on 29. Using that, I get 7.1. And I think we went through this in class, but I'll do it again. Slope is 8/7. Is it a parallelogram? So I found the slope. In this case, I could just count the rise over run. It was easy. Opposite sides were parallel, so yes. This is unimodal, meaning there's only one mode, one that occurs the most often. If you had two, you'd have two that stick up highest, and they'd be tied. It's also skewed to the left, so it's kind of like slanted left. The mode is not right in the middle. This would be skewed right. B is the correct box and whisker here. This one is a yes. This one is a no. It's not 8.5. It should be 8. I put these in the correct order. So the mean is 28.6. The median is 24. Mode 6 and 14. 61.5% was 1. 38.5 lost. I redid this so it's a little more clear with the median here, first quartile, third quartile, and then the two extremes. There's your histogram, graphing how many times each happened. And this last page, we didn't cover any of this. We went through it some in class, but I'm not going to count that sort of problem on the final against you. It'll be extra credit, so if you get it right, great, but I'm not going to go through this. I think it was kind of confusing to everyone. All right, there you go.